everybody that we are going to be recording this evening's proceedings. Good evening and a very, very warm welcome to all of you today at the launch of MOHAN Foundation's online course on legal aspects of organ donation and transplantation. As you may be aware, MOHAN Foundation has always had an online training, but we all know that online training became especially relevant when COVID struck. And since then, we have been determined to strengthen our online training space. Currently, we are offering the following courses: a one-year PG diploma in transplant coordination and grief counseling, a one-month transplant coordinator's professional certificate, one-day certificate course on organ donation, which is largely for volunteers and ambassadors for organ donation, family counseling and conversations on organ donation, and a course on taking care of your kidneys. The legal course has been specially designed for medical practitioners, non-medical or paramedical staff, and administrative staff in hospitals, and any other interested stakeholders. It could be NGOs that are working in this field, law students, anyone who wishes to understand the legal aspects in this very niche area. It has taken MOHAN Foundation months of preparation and hard work to complete the course. Having said that, it simply would not have been possible to put this course together without the generous support and selfless contribution of many experts from India and around the world. I take this opportunity to thank everyone who has been instrumental in bringing together this course. On behalf of MOHAN Foundation, I would like to begin by extending a very special thanks to our funder, TransAsia Consultants Private Limited, who are involved in marketing of security documentation in India for over 3 decades. Mr. Praveen Gupta is here with us, and he refuses to speak today. But I would like to thank him for believing in our work and investing in this rather complex cause, which most funders find very difficult to understand, really, leave alone support. I would now like to thank all those who have contributed towards the theoretical modules of this course. I would like to, at the very beginning, like to thank Dr. Samira Nandi, really the architect of the transplant law. Dr. Nandi, we have taken some of your earlier lectures and included in this course, lectures that you had earlier contributed towards. I'd like to thank Dr. Avnish Seth for contributing a section critiquing the Act and shedding light on disease-directed donation in India. Thank you, Dr. Seth. Dr. Ravi Mohanka for the video lectures on the 1994 Act and the amendments. I would like to thank Ms. Trilly Matthew for contributing a chapter on living donation documentation, Sukhwinder Lal for an article on how to create a brain death committee, Ms. Mayuri Burje for shedding light on how to get a transplant license for a hospital. These are all our transplant coordinators who know how things are done on the ground. I would again like to thank Trilly Matthew, Jay Lakshmi, and Mr. Gibson John for being part of a panel discussion, sharing their experiences in living donation transplantation, where they faced some legal challenges and how they overcame them. I would like to thank Ms. Mayuri Barje, Dr. Amit Joshi, and Dr. Chinna Durai for being part of a panel discussion, sharing cases they have contributed, coordinated in the deceased donation space, the legal challenges faced, and what they did in order to make the donation happen. So these are very practical panel discussions, providing practical and on-ground understanding of the law, which will be very, very useful when people do undertake this course. They can hear firsthand as to what our transplant coordinators face and how they circumvent those challenges. We were privileged to have many overseas experts for their invaluable contribution to our module on international laws on organ donation and transplantation. Each one has taken the time and effort to share a presentation and a video lecture on the legal aspects of organ donation and transplantation in their respective country. I thank Dr. Richard Deme, University of Rochester, for his contribution to the US Act, Dr. Radha Sundaram for UK, she's the clinical lead for organ donation with the NHSBT, Dr. Katie Najafizadeh, I'm sorry if I've not pronounced that rightly, from Iran, she's the CEO of the Iranian Society of Organ Donation, Dr. Maria Gomez from Spain, the Executive Director at the DTI Foundation, Dr. Praveen Joshi from Nepal, liver transplant surgeon at Hospital Nepal, Dr. Noora Afza Nupur from Bangladesh. Dr. Nupur is the Assistant Professor, Kidney Foundation, Hospital and Research Institute. Dr. Mirza Naqi Zafar from Pakistan. He's the Secretary General, Transplantation Society of Pakistan. Dr. Ashani Ratnakirti from Sri Lanka. She is the National Transplant Coordinator, Ministry of Health. And Dr. Mustafa Al-Mazawi from Kuwait, President, Kuwait Transplant Society. All of them extremely senior, busy people, took the time out to contribute lectures and video presentations to the course so that people, while understanding the Indian law, could also look at what is happening around the world. We're so very thankful to each one of you for taking out the time from your very busy schedules. We remain indebted, and your contribution will go a long way towards safe and ethical practices in organ donation and transplantation in accordance with the Declaration of Istanbul, with the guiding principles of WHO and the Transplantation of Human Organs and Tissues Act 1994 and the amended 2011 as applied in India for organ donation and transplantation. Thank you so much, all of you. At this point, I'm very, very pleased to have with us Dr. Rajneesh Sahai, the new NATO director. NATO is the National Organ and Tissue Transplantation Organization. He had a very busy evening, but agreed to spare some minutes with us. Dr. Sahai, thank you for being with us. And I would like you to, just share a few words with the audience here.
Thank you, Pallavi. Thanks everyone for giving me this opportunity to meet and speak. And I fully agree with Dr. Sunil Shroff sir that transplant coordinators, they are the real backbone. And I am really amazed to see because this is I recently joined NATO, and they have trained more than 2,000 transplant coordinators, which is really amazing thing. And transplant coordinators, as rightly said, are the backbones, and even grief counselors, which you are training also, and you are conducting a postgraduate program also. And I see a great contribution from your side, including NATO, and whatever help is we can give, I'll be very happy. And so that the organ transplants, at least they take off to at least a honorable position. Whatever work has been done by predecessors, I will like to take it to a further increasing heights. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Ravi, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Before Dr. Sahai has to leave, can we have a group photograph if everybody switches on their video camera?
Okay. If everybody can quickly put on their videos, and we can have.
Quick. Jareen, can you shoot all the participants?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sahai. I hope you'll stay on for as long as you can stay on.
Thank you. Sure. Thank you so much.
I now take great pleasure in welcoming Dr. Vikas Mahatma, our special guest for this evening, a member of Rajya Sabha and an eye surgeon of international repute who has performed over 1 lakh of eye surgeries. Dr. Mahatma is the founder medical director of Mahatma Eye Bank Hospital, Nagpur, which is a recognized postgraduate teaching institute run by SMM Eye Welfare Charitable Trust. The trust that was started by him in a small single room in 1986 now treats nearly 65 patients free of cost. So far, the hospital has performed over 1,80,000 eye operations, out of which 80,000 operations have been done free of cost. Dr. Mahatma was the first to start an eye bank in Vidarbha and establish the eye donation movement there. He has been instrumental in starting several eye hospitals and vision centers in central India, including Nagpur, Amravati, Gadchiroli, and Mumbai. Dr. Mahatma's contribution to the community eye care as a social worker and philanthropist brought him the 3rd highest civilian award, the Padma Shri, at the hands of the Honorable President of India in 2020. I would now request Dr. Mahatma to say a few words.
Good evening, friends. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
Yes, thank you. Namaste.
Yes, sir.
Because in many countries it may not be evening, so
early morning.
Everybody, yeah, dignitaries present here, especially the Ms. Pallavi Kumar. She has introduced everybody, and then we have Sujata as well as Dr. Sunil Shroff, and many panelists. We have Dr. Rajneesh Sahai also. So friends and all the panelists. At the outset, I shall like to say a few words to praise you people, because I don't have any words for that, because the most important thing is that you are doing a wonderful human service. You are facilitating the human organ transplant and giving life to so many people. So it's a very good work you have started, and you are doing it with full threshold. So I shall like to congratulate you all for the same. And that is, your contribution is beyond self. That is also very important. I shall like to say those who are supporting this cause are also very important, play a very important part. This Trans-Asia consultant, and to develop a course like this, I appreciate that also. As an ophthalmologist, as already told by Pallavi Kumar, Ms. Pallavi Kumar, that I started the eye bank here. So I'm very much attached to organ donation. And today the government is also very serious about the organ donation, because we want to government wants to facilitate this process. Our Honorable Prime Minister also spoke on this Mcqs about organ donation. Similarly, our Honorable Health Minister Dr. Mansukh Mandviyaji is also very happy and pro for this organ donation movement propagation. So the most important is that the government is pro. The people are also very enthusiastic to know about this. Recently, I have learned that a businessman in Bengaluru, because of accident, lost the wife and the son, and the daughter, which was around, I think, 5 years old or something like that. There, she was ill, and then she was transported to the hospital, and there she ultimately died. But before that, he could ask for a donation, organ donation, and that organ donation has given life to 5 people. ये जब सुनते हैं तो भी ऐसे रोंगटे खड़े होते हैं कि भाई क्या, when he lost his wife and son, still he can think of organ donation. So people also want to do this good job. They also want that this should be done. But there is some challenge. There are some challenges. What is the most important question is, how can we fulfill this gap so that organ donation will increase? One part is taken up by you people all. That is, voluntary organizations have taken up this cause. There is a national organization like NOTO. There is an organization like MOHAN Foundation, which you are doing it so well. And even the courses, which is rarely done by anybody. So I shall like to congratulate the MOHAN Foundation too. Second is the rules and the infrastructure. The infrastructure needed for organ donation in every district, in every state, that needs an improvement. Third is the rules and regulations. They also need the improvement. And that is the topic, I think, of the today's topic is also regarding the same, the legal aspects of organ donation and transplantation. What improvements do we need in this? That is very important, because the act is there, but we can change the rules and regulations so that this organ donation can be increased. One important thing which came to which I feel many years back actually, that we have now an informed consent. That okay, we inform the relatives and then we take the informed consent. That is there. But there can be a presumed consent which will not be acceptable to many people, and so it will not be acceptable here in India. That is my feeling. And one third thing which can be done, which I feel and we should work for that. And your suggestions, of course, at the end of this online course are welcome. One I feel is the opt-out system or the negative consent or opt-out system. Means what I feel, whenever there is a death, the death certificate will be issued to the relatives, nearest kith and kin, quickly, but he will have to give consent that I am not ready to donate the organs. A brain death, suppose we want to declare, I am not ready to donate the organs. If he has to sign this, then he has to think for that. And that initiates a thought process. Similarly, the doctors there, whosoever is taking the consent, also will be put a question, how it can be done. He will also ask himself how it can be done. So both will get a charge up for this thinking process, which is very important. As far as eye donation is concerned, I tell you, many people tell me after death that, okay, we wanted to donate, but I forgot that time because of the grief. The time is not that everybody will remember about organ donation. So how can we change this? How can we provoke them to take a note of this and say no? Then only I think this can be increased to a great extent, because many people want to do that. And when you meet them afterwards, they say, oh, we missed that thing. It never came to our mind. It was a short duration and nobody suggested us. So I feel personally, this opt-out system means we are not compelling anybody, but we are saying that I'm not willing for organ donation. And that can stand in the court also. That can start as it is whatever legal system we have. It will be within that legal system also it will come, because we are not making it compulsory as in presumed consent or something like that. Of course, there will be many suggestions from you people, because you are working now also full-heartedly for years together, and you must have all the views of other country legislations. And I shall be happy to receive your whatever new thoughts and new concepts you have, which we can process together, and we can send it to the Honorable Health Minister Mansukh Mandviya ji, and then let us do advocacy on that. That is what I feel. Of course, this was an opportunity what I thought I should share my thoughts with you. And I'm very much thankful for the MOHAN Foundation and all you people for allowing me and giving me an opportunity to share my thoughts with you. I think whatever you are doing is the best, and still there is definitely space to improve on. And I congratulate you all, and I wish all the best for this course, online course, which will initiate and which will increase the organ donation, and in turn will help the country. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mahatma, for your insights and for your assurance that you're willing to take our suggestions to a higher body, so that I just hope that you will, may I please request you to stay on for the panel discussion if you have time, because your contribution to the discussion will be immensely valuable. I just hope you will stay on, sir. But thank you so much for.
Yeah, I shall see.
Yes.
If you if I shall try to be part of it for a few time.
I sincerely hope so, Mahatma ji, that you stay on, because we do have some questions for you in the panel discussion. Although your name may not reflect there, but we want you to be there, because there are some questions which you could help us with.
Yeah, definitely. And as an advocacy group, you form an advocacy group, so that this process, because advocacy is a continuous process, so you can have advocacy group also, so that all the challenges which you are facing can be taken up with the ministry.
That's
Yes,
very
sir.
encouraging.
Excellent.
At this stage, I would like to request my colleague, Ms. Sujata, Associate Director, Courses, to walk us through the courses and the modules. Over to you, Sujata. Sujata, you unmute? Can't hear you.
Can you hear me, Pallavi?
Yes, yes, Sujata, loud and clear.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Mahatma, for formally inaugurating our course. It's indeed our honor to have you with us today. With much pleasure, I'm going to take you through the course and the modules that we have designed for this course. And as Pallavi said in her introduction, this course aims to help the participants equipped with the legal aspects of organ donation and transplantation. And currently, we are offering this course through a platform called Moodle, which is an open source learning platform. And this is our site, el.mohanfoundation.org. This course has been specially designed for all the medical practitioners and transplant professionals, as well as non-medical, paramedical, and administrative staff who are involved in this program. It also suits best to the other stakeholders who are interested, for example, NGOs working in the similar program, law students. It suits to all their expectations. Currently, the course has been designed and delivered through online modules, and it takes approximately about 30 hours to finish the course. We have 5 units, and these are those 5 units. Basically, the law, the Transplantation of Human Organs Act and its amendments issued by the Government of India, and its practical implementation in the hospital setting. And we also know, apart from the Central Act, some of the state governments have issued their own government orders which aim to further smoothening the entire implementation of the Act. So these government orders have been compiled and presented here for the others to understand how each state works around the program. As Pallavi said, we also have a unit called Critique of the Law, which addresses some of the gray areas as well as some of the areas which were untouched by the Central Act. We also have a unit on international laws of organ donation and transplantation. Under this 5 units, we have 20 modules. All these modules are presented in the form of text, PowerPoint, as well as video lectures. I'm just going to show you all a small snippet of each one of them. And I guess you are able to see this window. This is how currently we are delivering the text content, the PPTs. And this is the format of video lectures.
In the late 1980s, when I was working at the All India Institute as the chief of GI surgery, I was summoned by the health secretary because he said that the Prime Minister, Rajiv Gandhi, had come back from a tour abroad, and he wondered why heart and liver transplants were not being done in this country.
These are the snippets. Some of the highlights, we also have a section on court judgments, which talks about some of the writ petitions made in the past, and the relevant legal clauses and the judgments made. So all these writ petitions were compiled and they are presented here in this course, and which help us to understand and take things from the precedents. We also have a couple of panel discussions in which we have the experts talking about the real challenges are difficult. Some of them are commonly faced. So those challenges and difficult situations are discussed here, again, to help the learners to understand how to tackle those situations when it comes on the ground. Pallavi, just let me know whether you're able to share the
Yes,
audio.
I think some of the cases, some
Yes,
of the points that are coming across very clearly is, through your sharing, that don't take everything at face value, which came across very clearly with what Prilly shared, that what you see may not always be the case. Gypsum shared how not everything that you're dealing with is covered by the Act, and sometimes you have to bring in appropriate transplant authorities. But sometimes with Jayalakshmi's case, we realize even the transplant authorities, perhaps we need to go a step. We need to involve the courts, the state court, the district court, and the state court. So
these panel discussions address the on-the-ground challenges faced by the transplant coordinators, which are really helpful to learn the day-to-day challenges. And we also have designed MCQs almost for all the modules, which helps us more like a self-assessment, so that it would help the participants, whether if they have to, in case if they need to relearn, or they have to spend more time on particular unit, then again they can go back and learn those perspectives. So with that note, we have also implemented some of the MCQs, which is going to help us a self-assessment. So again, this is a snippet of the MCQ framed. Under the international laws on organ donation and transplantation, currently we have covered all these countries and their legal system towards organ donation and transplantation. We will continue to strengthen these units as we go along in the future. The participants can download their online certificate immediately after their successful completion of the course. So from end to end, this is completely online. Once the candidate registers, they will be given the credentials and they can go through all the modules. They can take up the assessments, and after completion, they get their certificates immediately. Thank you all. With that, I will close my presentation.
Thank you so much, Sujata. That was really, really well put. Really showed the whole course very nicely. And it's now time for our panel discussion. I'm superbly impressed with our time management here. I would like to bring in Dr. Sunil Shroff, Managing Trustee, MOHAN Foundation, who will be moderating this evening's panel discussion. Somebody wants to ask a question. Dr. Shroff, are you willing to let people ask questions at this stage?
Yes, we can while I'm loading my slides.
Okay, Sanjeev, you may ask your question. Somebody could unmute Sanjeev, please.
Yes, hi, good evening, everyone, and good evening, ma'am. I have a quick question. Is there any fees for this course? How is it going?
The course fees is 1,000 rupees.
Okay.
That's the course fee. It's a very highly subsidized course fees. Thank you, Sanjeev.
And how to go about it, ma'am? How to register? I mean, any link for this?
Yes, we will at the end of it tell you how to register for the course, Sanjeev.
Okay, and one last quick question, maybe in the panel, we have authorization committee, and at times it happens that a couple of the members are not available, including chairperson. So is there any provision in the law that somebody can deputize chairperson so that the committee can go on?
I guess those kind of questions, Dr. Shroff, you'll take up in the panel discussion.
Yeah, I'll try to do my best, because we do have an hour of time. At the same time, we do have 10 panelists, and I would like, each one of them obviously to
Dr.
spend
Shroff,
enough
let me know
time.
when you would like me to introduce them, after your presentation or before the presentation.
Yeah, you can introduce our panelists straight away.
Okay. Very privileged to have a very distinguished panelist for the panel discussion. Dr. Avnish Seth, Principal Director, Gastroenterology, Hepatobiliary Sciences and Transplant Hepatology from the Fortis Memorial Research Institute and Director for Fortis Organ Retrieval and Transplant. Dr. Anil Kumar, Additional DDG, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Department of Family Welfare. Dr. Noble Gracious, Associate Professor, Nephrology, GMCT, and the Nodal Officer of KNOS, Kerala. Dr. Rahul Pandit, Director and HOD, Critical Care, Fortis Hospital, Kalyan and Fortis Hospital, Mulund. Dr. Sujata Patwardhan, Professor and HOD, Department of Urology, GSMC and KEMH, Parel, Mumbai. Dr. Sonal Asthana, Clinical Lead, HPB and Multi-Organ Transplant Surgery at the Aster Integrated Liver Care Group, Aster Group of Hospitals. Dr. Ravi Mohanka, Chief Surgeon and Head of Department of Liver Transplant and Hepatobiliary Surgery at the Global Hospitals, Mumbai. Dr. Veena Roshan Jose, Assistant Professor of Law, National Law University, Nagpur. We also have someone who's going to share their personal story. Dr. Shaw, when you tell me, then I will introduce Saurabh.
Please go ahead.
Okay.
I have included him in the panel, and
right.
Dr. Vikas has already been introduced. Thank you.
Happy to welcome Saurabh Agarwal, who has recently been through a heart-wrenching personal tragedy and feels very strongly about the need for clarity in brain death testing procedures, due to lack of which he was unable to donate his wife's organs, even though she had pledged it during her lifetime. And we will leave it to Saurabh to share more when he comes. Over to you, Dr. Shroff. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Pallavi, for the introduction. And as I said, we have about roughly an hour to do our best to cover as many areas as possible and reflect back on the 25 years of the Transplantation of Human Organ Act. So let me go forward. And this is the slide I was talking to you about earlier. Dr. Samdar Nandri in 1988 on one of the television network, and see him talking about disease donor transplantation with Pranav Roy here, discussing it on the television. And soon after, as you heard from Dr. Nandi, there was a request from the Prime Minister's office regarding why we're not doing heart and liver transplants in India. And, the ball got rolling. Let me just. So this is the law which was passed, on 8th of July. President gave that in 1994 on the Transplantation of Human Organ Act, and the regulations subsequently came up in 1995. And today we have had one amendment after 1994, 2007, and we have the rules which were passed in 2014. And these are the various gadgets of India which was released. We also, as foundation, released a book on transplant law with Eddie Reckner. It's 250-page manual about 2 years back, because there's so much requirement from various hospitals regarding the law and the ambiguity. So we actually put a manual together of the whole law, and that's when we realized that we required to go a little further and design a course on the legal aspects on organ donation. And that's when we started the exercise about 2 years back. Today we met on, finally we've been able to put this course together. The law itself talks about donation for therapeutic use only. So organ donation from brain death, it talks about organ donation from living donors, and all regulatory rules, forms are related to the above. You must remember that many times we get requests, and we do use organs if they're not being utilized for research, law actually doesn't permit you to do that. And that perhaps requires a little amendment, but it has to be done after the request from the family. The law accepts, as I said, brain death to increase organ donation in the country. There's patients on ventilator, patients with road traffic accidents. For the regulatory enforcement, we have two bodies, the appropriate authorities. They're appointed by the state for permission and monitoring of hospitals for transplant, and the authorization committee gives clearance for distant living donors and unrelated donors to provide, permission so that and to determine that there's no commercial motivation in the donation. There is a difference between living donation and disease donation. Living donation is an elective surgery. Disease donation is a emergency surgery. Usually happens in the middle of the night. On an average, it takes 6 weeks to 3 months to get permission for a transplanted living donation in India today. Whereas with disease donation, everything happens within 2 to 3 days. Sometimes in living donors, who the donor is suspect, despite permission, sometimes there's a commercial intent. And that's where sometimes things could go wrong. Whereas with disease donors, it's an anonymous donor. With living, of course, one organ donation it does involve, as I said, a lot of bureaucratic process, and only one life is saved. Whereas with disease donation, multiple lives are saved, but multiple organs. In living donation, we have had some chance, some problems in the last 25 years, despite the law, despite the very good law we have in the country. Whereas with disease donation, we've not had any major issues as such. I think personally, this law is one of the toughest laws in the world today. And anything, it clearly defines, if something goes wrong, if the doctor is at fault, and or if there's a broker or middleman, the imprisonment and the fines are so well defined for the first offense, second offense, and so on. I feel that where we sometimes fall, short is on the implementation of the law. We have an excellent law as such. Even Dr. Mahatma was saying about, having a, some kind of an opt-out of death when they signed the consent form. Actually, we had in the 2011 amendment, we have what is called required request, Dr. Mahatma, and that actually requires clinicians, there is a brain death, that it requires them to ask for organ donation. You can always say no, but as you said, conversation is very important. If you don't have the conversation, there will be no donation. That's the reason why we have the required request law in the country. Unfortunately, not being implemented. That's where we fall short. We started this program in 1995, soon after the rules were formed, and there are very few hospitals in the country doing the disease donation. I was fortunate that I was involved very early from 1995 in this program. And if you look at these figures of disease donation from 2013 to 20, you can see that, how the numbers have gone up. In 2013, we had, almost about 250 donors, from which we got 240 livers and about 542 kidneys and so on. And we peaked in 2015 when we had, close to about, if you remember, 900 donors. We had about 1,200 kidneys and 600 livers and hearts and so on. And then we plateaued, and COVID came and we dropped, obviously. So we need to, graph was going up very well from 2013 onwards, but then we plateaued, and our numbers have from last 5-6 years been very stagnant. We need to find ways by which to improve these numbers, because there's a huge incidence of organ failure in the country. And with COVID now happening, we're talking about COVID lung, and suddenly the lung requirement has gone up. Now coming to the transplant itself, the law itself, as we have felt, has been designed towards looking at the public hospitals more than the private hospitals. Transplants are mostly done in the private hospitals in the country. 10% of transplants happen in public hospitals. Most trauma and brain death lands up in government hospitals because they are medical aid, whereas most recipients are in private hospitals. Having said that, currently, 90% of donations also happening in private hospitals. We are doing close to about 900 donations in this country every year. But if we do all the potential donors which are in public hospitals, we'll be doing not less than 9,000, at least 10 times more donations. So all the private hospitals have contributed immensely to the program. Unfortunately, most of the donors are in public care hospitals where very few transplants take place due to lack of infrastructure, manpower, because they're very busy with routine work. They don't have time for this kind of complex kind of program. So we need to look at, that's why we need to look at law. So I would ask Jenny to request him to put a quick poll, since we have about 90 people in the room, and I wanted this to be interactive before I go on to the panel discussion. The first question I would like to put to the audience is, has the Transplantation of Human Organ Act, after 25 years, lived up to its expectation? So you have 10 seconds to answer. Yes, it has achieved its objectives. No, it has not achieved. You're not sure. So go ahead and participate in this panel poll. And after 10 seconds, you'll have the results on the display here. I hope you can all press your buttons. 1, 2, 3. Yes, no, I'm not sure. Have you been able to do that?
Alien now.
You opened it?
Yeah.
I have put my poll. So that's the answer. So 22% feel yes, majority feel no, and not sure. And that's why we are here with this panel discussion. You can close this poll now. Have probably one more. What are the major hurdles in implementing the Transplantation of Human Organ Act? In the certification and definition of death, consent process from the relatives, medical legal case, and organ donation, all the above, none of the above. 5 choices, 10 seconds you have. Please go ahead, Darin. So I have submitted mine, and let's see what the audience feels. Yes, Jareen, can you show what is the result? Brain death, 14%, consent process, 18%, medical legal case and organ donation, 22%, all the above, 60%. So most of you feel that, we do have those challenges, and this is why we are going to discuss the 3 key issues in this panel discussion on brain death certification, consent process, medical legal cases. Let's go forward. So we already introduced our panelists. So let's ask the first question: has the Act lived up to its expectations? What are the gaps in the THOA Act related to brain death, consent process, medical legal case, other issues like direct donation, unclaimed body, simplifying living donation, increasing scope by using swaps, and the way forward? This is our framework of our panel discussion today. So can I first put the first question: has the Act lived up to its expectation, as you saw in our poll? I request our Rajya Sabha member Dr. Vikas Mahatma to give his views on this for the next minute or two. Dr. Mahatma, are you there? Pallavi?
Yeah, you need to unmute.
Yeah, you need to unmute Dr. Mahatma.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes, sir.
So I have actively participated on this also. The thing is that the Act has not lived up to its expectations, as many have given their votes on that direction. So what I feel, we need improvement definitely in that. And we have to go through other acts also, other countries, those who have provided the Act, and how they could achieve more as compared to India. Means maybe their number may be small as compared to India, but their population may be small. So that relationship has to be kept in mind. So we have to go through the acts. And I told you, even if any suggestions are there as far as rules and regulations are needed to be changed, because there were questions in the mind that the legal process or the consent and everything needs an improvement. That can be done easily as far as rules and regulations are concerned. As far as the Act is concerned, we have to go it in a depth, because the process is very lengthy. And to start with, we can concentrate more on the rules and regulations. And as I have told you, my more interest is in consent opt-out, so that before giving the death certificate, if we ask that you have to opt out, you say no, so that legally what happens, there is no objection as far as the basic things in the law are concerned, that you cannot compel anybody. That is true. But here we are not compelling anybody. We are only compelling him to think over it. That's all. So that small change also will increase. That is my feeling. Of course, you people have worked and you can have your own suggestions in that.
Dr. Shroff,
So,
can
so
I make a quick comment on that?
Dr. Mahatma, we do have the required request for in the 2011 amendment. It will not be implemented. That's our problem.
No, no,
And-
it will be implemented if it is connected with death certificate. That
Yes.
prior to death certificate, you have to have that certificate from the relatives.
Yes.
That linkage is most important. So
Yes,
anybody cannot issue the death certificate unless
Without-
until he has to say that I am not interested in.
So all we need to do is put the regulation in place. You're absolutely right. Fantastic. Dr. Anil Kumar, what do you think? Dr. Anil Kumar?
I have to unmute. Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
I would say to a great extent it has fulfilled, but because this act was framed 25 years back, and the objective of the act was to provide for regulation of retrieval, storage, and transplantation. Perhaps there was no regulation at that time, and the main concern was the commercial dealings, which could have been which was a great concern at that time. So to a great extent, those objectives of bringing in regulation, now it is a completely government regulated activity. No hospital can perform a retrieval or a storage or transplantation without getting a registration from the government authorities. And directly the state government is involved in providing those licenses. The state has to regulate all those activities. Second, commercial dealings, now we don't hear those kind of scams which we used to hear earlier. So those kind of exploitation of poor, and so to that extent, and even the punishments, as you mentioned, they are quite stringent. Definitely implementation of those provisions is still an issue. 2011 amendment has brought many provisions to improve the donor pool, like swap donation, but those things are gradually like required requests you mentioned, registration of the retrieval centers, and so all these provisions, they are still, we find one of the major factor for which is a hindrance is the reluctance of our neurophysicians and the neurocritical care experts to declare brainstem death. So that is the biggest challenge that I see, because even just 2 days back there was a donor who was willing, but the neurospecialist who was available at a hospital in Chandigarh, he refused to declare. He refused to even examine for identifying. So that kind of a situation happens. So that is a big challenge that we are facing. That there is a people are willing to donate, but still, yes. So that brainstem death declaration is a big issue.
Rahul Pandit.
Dr. Pandit is not here.
Jata or Sujata?
Dr. Patwardhan is there.
Yeah.
Dr. Sujata is also had COVID, so she's also recovering like Dr. Nandi. Dr. Sujata, thank you for being here.
Good evening, sir, and thank you for inviting me. I feel that in my setup in a government hospital, in a public hospital, there is apathy in the intensive care units to even allow or even permit brainstem death certification. And that apathy is at the level in the minds of people, which is difficult for any act or anybody to, though the government can take very strict attitude towards this apathy, but yet that has not been happening in our sector. In the public sector, it's difficult to maintain and even pay attention because of the sheer magnitude of the patients and the flow, and there is no separate sector or there is no separate unit which is taking care of these patients. They are left to the in the general wards, in the general ICUs, in the surgery and the medicine ICUs. So,
Dr. Sujata,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but if there's one thing you can change in your hospital, what do you change to make this happen?
I would like to have a donor detection unit, or I would have to have a separate intensive care unit in each and every government medical college, which is lacking in all the medical colleges, at least in Maharashtra.
So we'll take this suggestion forward, Sujata.
Thank you, sir.
Dr. Shroff, Dr. Seth wanted to come in, and there are some questions also related to what's going on.
Yeah, just thank you. I just wanted to comment on what Dr. Mahatma said. So I totally agree with you, but we already have a required request in place for organ donation. So as far as opt-out is concerned, my personal feeling is that we could introduce it for cornea donation to start with. If after every death, we have an opt-out for cornea donation for a few years, the system could gear up gradually towards organ donation.
So, Dr. Seth, why can't it be, you're right, it could be started with, cornea donation, but why can't it also try to at least the units which, are doing organ donation, who have license for organ donation, at least in those units, why can't it also be made compulsory? Because it's already there, it's already mandatory. So why should we give that as a soft option? We already are doing disease donation, at least in roughly about 40 to 50 hospitals now regularly.
So we have discussed this so many times amongst all of us, and we generally feel that as a nation, we need to have a slightly more robust approach to brain death and organ donation before we make a law which some people might consider to be too harsh at this stage. So if we start with tissue donation, it will make a wonderful way to lead the way towards organ donation.
Okay, now Pallavi, you said there are some questions. We'll have to move forward because I have a long way to go.
Dr. Deme wants to know if the aversion to declare brain death primarily is due to religious reasons or others.
No, I mean that is usually there's no religion here involved.
Yeah.
Normally, we have done a study on this, and most of the time, the reason for saying no to donation is not religion. Religion comes third. One reason why people say no to donation is they've not been counseled adequately. They have not been told adequately about the whole organ donation process. Most of them are, not approached in the right manner.
Yeah.
Religion comes, in fact, only third in this whole thing. What you've done. Next question.
I see Dr. Pandit here, Dr. Shroff.
Yes, Rahul. Quickly, you need to tell us your opinion about, the last 25 years. Has the Act lived up to its expectations?
I think the Act has lived up to its expectations. I have absolutely no, as a person who is a proponent of organ donation, I have absolutely no doubt that the Act is actually quite good. There are only two things, if you want me to make a suggestion, which I think should change. And no matter what, all of you, I've heard a discussion for the last 5 minutes about opt-out, which the MPs have said, as well as a separate intensive care, what Dr. Patwardhan said. I think none of that is required right now. What is required is one simple, straightforward thing, that it is a universal death declaration, which means that organ donation is delinked completely with declaration of death, which is the only thing which is holding.
Discussion, Rahul.
Yeah, okay, all right. So we'll go to that one. And the second is that in case we are not able to do a clinical declaration, ancillary test should be allowed, which is a 4-vessel angiogram. I think if we do both of these, we will have no problems. Intensivists will not have any hesitation in declaring death. That's my only 2 comments, sir.
Thank you, Rahul. So there we are. Brain death linked to organ donation and is not accepted as death. In India, diagnosis of brain death only done if organ donation is considered. Corporate hospitals especially have constantly problems on switching off ventilators if relatives say no to donation. So you can be dead enough to donate, but not dead enough to switch off the ventilators. That's the situation today in our country. We have spoken about this in the meeting of critical care, the Indian Critical Care Society meeting, and many doctors are still very reluctant. They're very defensive about this. Death in India is defined as permanent disappearance of all evidence of life at any time after live birth has taken place. And there's in defensive medicine, many of the people think that can that definition be challenged? The heart and lungs are still working. as a unit. So can it be challenged? And that's why they're very reluctant to certify brain death if there is no to organ donation. Currently, the brain death certificate is not accepted as death in the death register, as death certificate for insurance claim or for any other purpose. There are 3 laws in India talking about death. One is the Registration of Birth and Death Act of 1969, Section 646 of Indian Penal Code, Transplantation of Human Organ Act. The rules of death certificates are available in 2 different formats: the Registration of Birth and Death Acts and the Transplantation of Human Organ Act. We actually wrote an article in the Indian Journal of Medical Ethics on this issue. In death and security death need to have a uniform declaration of death, and we have elaborated to a great deal about the problems we are having currently. Let's go to Kerala as an example. Kerala initiated the disease donation program in 2012, and it peaked in 2015, and then 2017 is suddenly delayed. We have Dr. Noble Glitches, and he's going to tell us about how they linked brain death to organ donation. Dr. Noble, are you there? Can you unmute yourself and explain how you have done the linking of brain death and organ donation? I think you have some slides as well.
Yeah.
Has it made any difference in the attitude of intensive care unit doctors? Has it increased the number of brain death certification?
Yeah,
and any other states which have followed the Kerala example? Dr. Noble, over to you.
Sir, I'll explain in, I have a couple of slides.
Yes, please go ahead and share your screen. I'll stop sharing. I'll stop sharing.
Yeah. Share 1 minute. One minute, sir.
Are you able to share your screen?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. One. I'll make it full screen.
Just double click to get your full screen. Yeah. Just double click, Dr. Noble. Otherwise, go ahead. We are able to see your slides. Noble?
There's some internet issue, I think. Please.
Dr. Shah, there are some raised hands. Meanwhile, he's putting.
Yes, we can take some questions. Go ahead.
Chinnadurai wanted to ask something.
Chinnadurai, one of the champions of disease donation in Karnataka, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. See, we all know that there is a huge gap between the need and the donations. So we have huge potential in each and every state. We compare the Western Spain standard. We can generate each state even around 5 to 6 donations per day. So the huge gap between these two. And one side, government hospitals losing all their brain death patients, even without diagnosing, dying. Other side, private hospitals who in donations, they're not missing even single organ. Even with the cardiac arrest of 1 hour, we CPR being done and revive the patient and organ donation being done. Two extreme. As you explained before, yeah, there is a commercial interest in private hospitals where there are no commercial interest in government setup. So to bridge the gap, why can't we introduce like OPO system, like, like what is happening in the US, organ procurement organization, where we can, run in India so that the donations will go to next level. So, the people can contact OPO. We can, with the MOHAN Foundation, with the NOTO, we can set up each state capital. We can have a,
we'll come to the discussion because, to be honest, we want to take more the basic issues at the moment we are facing us. And these are implementation issues, and we'll talk about that if we get time. Dr. Noble, are you on? Please go ahead.
Yeah, so this is the vexing question I receive from all ICU specialists. And here in death certification, only if relatives express their willingness for donation. That is the gap which I have seen for the last 10 years across Kerala, even after,
Dr. Noble, your slides are not moving, sir.
All this legislation. So when
Noble, your slides to move. Please forward, yeah.
It's not moving?
Yeah, now
it's moving.
Yeah, it's moving.
Yes, go ahead.
Issue with the connection, internet.
Can we come back to Noble once he has better connectivity?
I think so.
Brain, please speak to Dr. Noble Gracious, get him to on a better connection, bring him back.
Hello. Hello.
Dr. Noble?
Yeah.
Your connectivity is very poor. To reconnect and get back to us.
Okay, right. I'm not audible now?
You're audible. Yes, you're audible now. You switch off your video, perhaps.
Okay, right. It's fine.
Dr. Noble, why don't you just say a few words rather than
just say your rather than showing slides.
No, not happening.
No, Dr. Noble, we're not able to hear you. It's not clear.
Okay.
Maybe one of you should call Dr. Noble.
I'll just call him.
Rahul?
Yes,
Dr.
sir.
Shroff, I think.
Dr. Shroff.
Yeah, I would like you to elaborate on delinking. Kerala has done that, delinking through a comment order. And I was speaking to Dr. Noble yesterday, and he said,
experts, they say we are okay. Panelists can speak and then I'll come back later.
yes, Noble, you can reconnect and come back. We'll wait for you while we have discussion here in the panel.
Yeah, so sorry, sir. I can give my thoughts on this.
Yeah, sorry. Rahul, just to tell you that yesterday when I was speaking to Dr. Noble Gracious, what he said was that they have brought the GEO, and now the intensive care people are more comfortable, and certification of brain deaths is happening. In fact, yesterday in the government medical college in Trivandrum, they did a donation, and the comfort level is much better after having dealing. Rahul, your opinion?
Sir, I think, I always find that whenever the discussion around organ donation goes, everybody who is actually not involved in the organ donation process has a very strong opinion about it. But people who are like us, who are actually at the bedside, who are doing organ donation, the opinion is not asked. So putting in GEO, putting in anything is not actually going to solve the problem completely. It's like a half-hearted attempt. I think it needs to clearly be mentioned in our death and birth registry that it is a death by brain death criteria or by circulatory criteria. If that is done, most intensivists will be very, very clear of what they want to do. And this is the biggest problem, because we can try and bring in anything. People will have opinion. You don't have to convert me, sir. I am already converted. I know what I'm doing. But we have to convert the 10,000 other Indian Society of Critical Care Society members who probably don't have the same view. And that is where the problem is. Handful of intensivists, we will always come and we will always say, because we know that if you're dead enough to donate, you're dead enough to switch off the ventilator, and it should be decoupled. But the problem is that we actually try to go around it. We never try and address the issue clearly. And the issue has to be addressed clearly. The law has to change if this country has to increase the organ donation, because Kerala, the law has changed. The GEO has come 2 years ago. And if Dr. Gracious is saying it's happening now, I can assure you it's happening only in smaller numbers. It is not going to happen in larger numbers. And if it has to happen in the numbers which we actually feel the organ donation should pick up to, we will have to have clear laws which are like UK or Australia, where the death is completely delinked with the organ donation process. The problem here is that we talk about brain death only in the TOHA Act, not in other two acts which you just showed, the Indian Penal Code as well as the Death and Birth Registry Act. So unless and until it comes into that Death and Birth Registry Act, people will have doubts in their mind, and we have to address this issue very clearly, sir. I mean, I'm very happy that the Member of Parliament, sir, is here, and he should understand that what the doctors feel.
Absolutely. In fact, the government of India is, at the moment amending the Registration of Birth and Death Act, and this is the right time to pitch it. In fact, they asked suggestions, and we have sent our recommendations to them on accepting brain death in the Registration of Birth and Death Act and avoid confusion to make brain death universally acceptable. bring it like, you have in US, UK, and Australia. The act itself can be defined death as an individual who has sustained either irreversible cessation of circulatory and respiratory function or irreversible cessation of all function of brainstem. So all they need to do is insert B in this act, and we are done. Just four, 5 words will help us to go forward. So I think this is the way forward. And you're right, Rahul. And what Noble is saying is, although it has taken time to implement this in Kerala, but it is happening, which is good. In fact, when I spoke to Critical Care Society, the doctors also felt that if there was something written in the law, it would help. I think Kerala has done that. Government of India should consider doing it. So let's do a quick poll here again. So I'm sure you'll all agree. Do we need to have inclusion of brain death in the Registration and Birth of Death Act? Jareen, can you put the poll up? So make your choices and be heard. Hopefully we can submit all this to the ministry also and take it forward. Yes, can you show the poll?
I have a concern on this, sir. If you allow me, after this poll, I'd like to voice a little concern.
Yes, you can go ahead and voice a concern, Dr. Avnish said, as we move forward.
So with all the transplant coordinators here, my concern with this is that we've had 3 donations in my hospital where the family took 4 days, 5 days to decide about donation. If we are going to switch off ventilators very quickly on the first day, if the family says no to donation, then we may be actually losing out on a considerable amount of donors. So somewhere we have to find a balance where our trigger to switch off the ventilator has to be held back till the family is given adequate time.
Avnish, that's an issue on the ground which can be discussed separately. This is more of a broad issue, but to include this in the Registration and Birth Death Act, the brain death. I mean, this is nothing to do with switching of the ventilators as such.
Dr. Shroff,
yes,
Dr. Mahatma, just I want to make it clear because I got convinced that okay, RBDA, that we need to have inclusion as brain death in RBDA, but whether the change in the law is needed or the rules and regulations, even if we change, will it be okay? Because in Kerala, it was possible with this law. That is what I understood. If
sir, with due respect to you, I'll say that the Birth and Death Act is a little antiquated act. It was passed in 1969. And, brain death, we need to have in our country uniform declaration of death. That is essential one part of the aspect of the law itself, because all it talks about irreversible cardiorespiratory arrest. It doesn't talk about brain death at all. So that becomes a challenge. So to make it universally acceptable, at least people talk about brain death, at least, as you said, at least conversation should be there. So at least for the awareness also, brain death needs to be included in the act. And this needs to be more, to the current times. The whole death act should be, changed. That's why we are asking that. And this has already been done in, places like UK and US.
Okay,
they have included
some comments from UK and US. Should I read them out?
Dr. Richard is there, right?
Yeah, and Dr. Radha Sundram says, I agree with Dr. Pandit. In the UK, determination of death is separate to donation and therefore removes any misconceptions about vested interest. And Dr. Demi says in the US, it's a uniform definition of Death Act accepted by the Medical Association, Bar Association, and all states.
Can I get them on can they speak? Richard or Radha can speak?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Could you unmute Jaren, Dr. Radha and Dr. Yeah.
Just a very brief comment.
Radha, you can go ahead.
Thank you so much. I'm finding this really, really interesting. It's just to say that what we've needed to do, and I think a number of your esteemed speakers mentioned it, is that we've needed to get intensivists on board. And actually the incentives for them are very few because they already have rapport with the family, and there is this moral distance that Dale Gardner keeps talking about. They want to help only the family in front of them, and all those others, while they accept ethically and morally that helping others is useful, it doesn't have tangible value for them at the point of end of life. But what we've done, what now happens is that we do have to do brainstem death tests, regardless of whether we are proceeding with donation or not. So it's separate. And we get audited on that in all intensive care units. So if you had a patient who came in with a traumatic brain injury and they were actually brainstem dead, but you didn't conduct brainstem death tests, then it's scrutinized and discussed. I mean, the UK, like the NHS, likes to practice a no blame, no shame type culture. So but being an outlier amongst your peers, being the only intensivist who did not take the trouble of actually doing those tests, is something that appears to be a deterrent. And it's very important for it to be recognized in law, but I think a lot of work needs to be done with the intensivists who need to recognize the value in actually determining death and then sort of fulfilling the wishes of the family if they wish to donate.
Thank you, Radha. Since we are still short on time, let's go forward and discuss about the consent process. I'm giving a case history. There is one Mrs. Agarwal, because the gentleman is here, that's why I'm revealing the name. She had taken a pledge for organ donation in 2019. Sadly, in November 2020, she became brain dead and the family was very keen to donate. The hospital where she was admitted couldn't go ahead with the apnea test, and they knew that CT angio was an option, but they weren't too sure whether the law accepted it, and they wanted the husband to take a court order to allow them to do CT angio to accept as an alternative. As Rahul Pandit said, we need to include ancillary tests. And I request Mr. Saurabh Agarwal to share his traumatic experience briefly. Saurabh, are you there?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thanks for having me here. So we had actually gone to hospital for a small elective surgery, and during pre-op, my wife Bhakti, she got a cardiac arrest, and after a 15 days struggle, she was declared brain dead. And she was declared brain dead with the 2 apnea tests carried out in the hospital. After which we decided to go for the organ donation for her. For donation, she had to be shifted to another hospital, where the doctors next day wanted to carry out the apnea test again, but she could not survive the first test itself. So doctors called up and said that we are not able to carry out the apnea test, and that's where we can't go ahead with the organ donation. We asked for the alternative, and as Dr. Shroff mentioned, that they said that CT angio is possible, but you need to go and get the court order. Now at that stage, definitely you are not in the mental space to do anything else. And we simply decided to go ahead without the organ donation. If we could do the donation, she could have been able to give life to 6 people at least.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So these are all missed opportunities, and because of the gaps in the law. And if we do that, things will definitely change. I'll just give you experience of our, working in the government general hospital in Tamil Nadu, where we have an MOU with the government to provide grief counselors and transplant coordinators in the hospitals. And in 10 years, we identified 299 brain deaths, of which 291 families were approached. 198 families said yes to donation, resulted in 136 donations. 66% conversion rate. But there were, 62 donors. After consent, we lost their lives. Almost, 33%. So these are all missed opportunities. And in many of these situations, we couldn't do the apnea test, despite families saying yes to donation, and they went on to only do tissue donation. So many missed opportunities in the country, even now, with the gaps in the law. So if we can't do at least brain death, certification, we can do donation after circulatory death, and this has increased the organ donation figures by 33% in the many developed countries. So we are missing an opportunity in India, and we need to implement donation after circulatory death. That provision is already there even in our Transplantation of Human Organ Act. I want to bring Dr. Ravi Mohanka here, and then a very brief comment from Dr. Amnish Seth to talk about the putting a regulation, very simple regulation for circulatory death in this country to increase the donation rate, and so that we don't have these missed opportunities. Dr. Ravi, are you there? Dr. Ravi Mohanka?
Dr. Mohanka was here.
Avnish?
Yeah, thank you, sir. I think this is the need of the hour. And um, as you know, we've all got together, about 20 of us, led by you, and we have come out with a draft paper on how we can go ahead. And the DCD is various types, and the type 4, where we have a brain death person in whom the heart has stopped and we could not go ahead with donation. I think that is the one we need to target in the country. And I think once our paper is published and the guidelines are clear, this will make a huge impact in the country. Of course, the challenges of withdrawal of care will remain, but at least some types of DCD we will be able to address.
So if Dr. Sahai is still there, we would like to send him the, a publication, and maybe it can be implemented as a guideline in the country, because already the Transplantation of Human Organ Act allows donation after circulatory death. All we need to do is put a few things in place, and maybe you can form a committee, and implement this. It's already happening in PGI Chandigarh and a few other hospitals. So this could be a way forward to increase our donation.
So can I give my opinion, Rahul, here?
Yes, Rahul.
So again, sir, I think we are again.
Keep it brief, Rahul, because we are
we are again skirting around the main issue. The main issue here is that if we have not got our brain death donation act in proper place, this is going to be very difficult. Again, everybody else is giving an opinion without any intensivist involved. Again, the paper which Dr. Seth is talking, 5 of us are there, but it's not going to help converting 5 intensivists, sir. We need to be very clear what we are doing. The withdrawal of care is even bigger issue. So donation after brain death is probably easier. Withdrawal of care with DCD is even bigger issue. No matter how much we talk, that's not going to be happening, sir.
Okay, Rahul. It is happening in PGI Chandigarh, Rahul. It is happening if you other hospitals.
Sir, smaller hospitals, I'm not. I mean, small number of hospitals, I agree. I'm talking about a larger picture, sir. Larger picture is going to be difficult.
But Rahul, this is a work in evolution, and it's not going to change overnight. But at least have the regulation in place, Rahul. At least in the previous case where they wanted court order, and so on. At least in that situation, there could have been an opportunity. They could have done this was clear case of mastic criteria 4, and the donation could have happened in that hospital. So there are instances where we could still use this, as I showed even in the government general hospital in Chennai, where we have had missed opportunities. So if there's at least some guidelines in place, some hospitals may consider and increase the donation. This is work in evolution. It's not going to happen overnight.
Yes.
But I fully concur with you that a lot of things needs to be done simultaneously, and we definitely need to have the uniform declaration of death. We need to definitely have ancillary tests in place.
Just I want to ask one question. Can I?
Yes.
Yeah, whether there are any chances of misuse of brain death when the intensivist or other people to certify proper are not there, and what should be the proper process declare brain death in a routine hospitals, not very well developed, high profile hospitals.
So I think, sir, for that, again, our motto is here. A ICU training is compulsory for them to understand how to certify brain death, and the whole process needs to be in place. And ideally speaking, all intensivists should go through a short course on end of life care, which includes brain death certification and how to talk to the families. In fact, countries like Australia have a structured course for 1 day for all intensivists to go through, so that the trust factor is not compromised, and the brain death certification is done properly.
Dr. Sonal Asthana has raised his hand.
Now, Pallavi, with your permission, if we can extend this panel discussion by 10 minutes, it will be good, because I'm running short on time.
It's on my permission, it's a panelist permission, but Dr. Asthana has raised his hand. Maybe we can bring him in this.
Yes, very quick words from you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that just wanted to come back to the point that Rahul mentioned. For the donation mentioned to go ahead, you really did not need to have a DCD law. You basically needed you to actually be able to utilize the law properly, as we do regularly. Because that is not a that's not something that kind of needed a modification to allow for a type 4 DCD. So I think that it elaborates both points. One is that the law doesn't change the requirement for process, and it doesn't sidestep the requirement for commitment on the part of the intensive care doctors to actually declare, declare.
Okay. Thank you, Somal. Let's come to the next question of related to consent process. This is again a challenge. Who is next of kin and who can give permission for donation? It's not clearly defined. I'll give you 2-3 case histories. These are all real case histories. 12-year-old brain death from road traffic accident. All members were injured. Hospital's grandfather came forward to give consent for donation. The hospital was not sure if they could go forward. Another case, 48-year-old woman, brain death, RTA, husband was unconscious in the ICU, minor daughter was 20, and 21-year-old son came forward to donate organs. Later, father sent a notice to hospital that it was not a legal consent. So we do have these challenges on next of kin, who can give consent, who is the next of kin. Dr. Anil Kumar, can we have some kind of a guideline on next of kin? Like, they have in other countries, who is next of kin defined. It could be in a hierarchy, could be spouse or partner, that's wife, parent or child, brother, sister, grandparents, niece, nephew, stepfather. What do you think? Can we have this kind of thing put in the regulation?
Yeah, basically, next of kin usually means somebody who is the closest in the family, and that we derive from basically the inheritance law. Though we have 3 types of inheritance laws in the country, we have for the separate law for the Muslims, for the Hindus and Christians. So the person who is a legal possessor of the body of the deceased donor is the next of kin. And legal possessor means, like in case of like somebody, some person has died, the closest would be his wife. So then the next comes the children of the person, and so that this is how it is defined for the properties. So the same the word used is legal possessor. So legal possessor, we have to see that who is the legal, and particularly it is the duty of the person who is doing the counseling or the transplant coordinator, that they try to build a consensus, and there should be nobody objecting to the donation. So those such situations, they do rise, and whenever a person who may not be a legal possessor, but who is a sort of a head man for that family, may come forward and refuse to donate.
So Dr. Anil Kumar,
Dr.
Anil Kumar, I know about this Inheritance Act, but not necessarily people on ground. So can there be a small regulation in the THO Act defining who is next of kin for clarity of all the coordinators and doctors in this country? Who is next of kin? How is it defined so that there's no confusion, in fact?
Actually, next of kin is not the word being used now. It is the legal possessor, the person who is in the legal possession of the body. So that is the word used in the rules now. So so legal possessor means the person who has got the right over the body. The closest living relative is the word, and though it is separate among the Muslims, and it is separate from among Hindus, and we have the Indian inheritance law also. So that is the legal possession. But on the ground, the people should try to build consensus. There should not be voices of against these donations. We should not try to create a conflict situation among the family members for the donation.
Kumar, here again, when you say person lawfully in possession of dead body, again it comes to the question of next of kin only. Indirectly, you're coming to the same thing here also, because again, nobody knows who is the person who's lawfully in possession of body when you have the husband, wife, or the parents or the children. Somebody not available. So if we define that, wouldn't that make life easier? Can I ask Veena? This question was also raised by one of our members when we put out this, Devang, was one of our members raised the same question. And may I ask Veena, who is a legal expert, which is from Karnataka, to give her views on this? Who is the person in legal in possession of body or next of kin?
Good evening to everyone. Thank you, Dr. Shroff, for the question. So what I would see here is instead of thinking about what was told by Dr. Rahul, I completely agree with that, because in law we have this kind of order which is generally used in inheritance. The same is what we can expect in this case also. Apart from that, what I understand is, if as Dr. Vikas Mahatma was rightly pointing out, that if we can put or bring in this opt-out consent process, okay, so then the things are much easier when compared to what we have right now. So the person himself has an opportunity there. So the person himself can opt out when he is alive and when he is in his senses. So that's the best choice or best option which is available. And regarding the entire statute, if you look at it, we can say that the society is changing and the law should also change according to the changes which are taking place in the society. For the past 25 years, it was all right, maybe, but now I think it is time that we need to, bring in changes to this in order to, yes, doctor, you have some.
For people on the ground who are working in the middle of the night, I think, giving them clarity on these issues would be greatly helpful. And I still think that a next of kin definition should be there, whether he's in lawful possession of the body or whatever. Who is responsible? That is very important, because again, there are many missed opportunities. We have had situations where the wife says yes to donation, and then another person turns up saying that she's a legal wife, and she says, I don't want to donate. In India, we have had all kinds of situations where we have had this opportunity of donation. So that's why we are bringing this up, and we are requesting that people who are finding this law and regulations give clarity to the people working on the ground. Let's move forward, and
Dr.
thank you for
Mohanka
your
has
view,
joined
Meena.
back. I think Dr. Mohanka had got cut off. He's joined back.
Okay, let's go forward, and we'll bring him at some stage soon. Medical legal cases in organ donation. We have 8.4 million deaths in India. Estimated 1 to 4% such deaths are due to brain death. That comes to about 84,000 to 330,000. Deaths due to road traffic accidents is huge in India. 400 people die on roads every day, or 147,000. 67% of head injuries. So the estimated deaths due to head injury is 95,000. Could be having brain injuries. So we have a huge road traffic accident, death rate, and many brain deaths in that situation. Presently, we are only converting 1% to organ donation, these brain deaths. 76% of brain deaths in Tamil Nadu were due to medical legal cases. Now, these are young donors, healthy donors. Most organs can be used. We also have challenges in medical legal cases with organ donation, interstate donation, where a donor is from another state brought to another state. Donation in homicide or suicide is very difficult to do. In many donations, there are time delays in getting the inquest done by the police, getting post-mortem after the donation done, and handing over the body to the relatives. We had a 50-year-old male, RT was on the road traffic accident happened on Tuesday, declared brain death in the corporate hospital on Wednesday. Family comes forward to donate organs on Thursday. Hospital informs that donation body will require shifting to the government hospital for post-mortem. Family agrees, but wants the body by Friday. Saturday is not considered auspicious for the last rites of the donor. But by the time donation happens, it is Friday afternoon. Government hospital refuses to do post-mortem in the evening. And the whole thing, is in disarray. The family is very unhappy. And these are the situations. This happens quite regularly in the country. Is Sujata still there?
Yes, she's
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Sujata, we have had issues related to some of the medical legal cases in Maharashtra. And, I wanted you to just elaborate a little bit on that and tell us what are the solutions. And then Sonal will talk about it.
Yes, sir. So the problem is there is not a forensic department associated with each of the private setups. So we have started a forensic committee in Roto, and the suggestion is that the forensic experts from the government hospitals should visit the the private hospitals even at whatever time required, and help in conducting the post-mortem in the operation theater. But as you know, none of the states have a uniform policy on this. So if the government of India has a policy about conducting postmortem in the operation theater or the next room and makes it a policy, it will be okay. Otherwise, right now, everybody is trying to find their own solutions. And for us, like this would be a paid service to the forensic officers who, medical officers who go and do it.
Sujata, is it working now?
Pardon, sir?
Is it starting to work?
So it's just been decided, and we are deciding as the cost it is proposed with NLU. We had a meeting which was presided by the Chief Justice, Mr. Abhay Oak, and it has been proposed that it should be a paid service, and approximately 7,000 rupees should be the service charge. So I'm sure it will come into force soon. Sir.
Now, you in Karnataka, you have been able to do something and put a process in place.
Yes, it has taken a couple of years, and I mean it goes back to the larger issue that we've been talking about. Obviously, there are these grand sweeping changes that can be made at the level of the law, but there is a huge amount that we can achieve by sort of simple application of the rules to local specific situations. Okay. So now, like in Karnataka, the Jiva Sarthikate about 2 years ago had requested the forensic department at Victoria Hospital to go ahead and do transplants in private hospitals as well, provided in cases of brain death declaration, because forensic departments in the Victoria traditionally have been very supportive of the organ donation program for the last decade or so. And Dr. Ravi had actually agreed to that. So what we have in place right now is that while we have a process of an inquest that happens before the donation, where a policeman comes and inspects the body, after which organ donation happens, after that the police require a picture taken of the body cavity showing which organs have been removed. And then on informing the forensic department, they are actually happy to come and complete the postmortem formalities in the operation theater itself. So that has been working with patchy success, I must say, because one of the things that is important is putting together some sort of compensation for these doctors who are coming out of hours and the staff who are coming out of hours to do the postmortem. I think that is a
issue.
That is kind of an issue. But I mean, again, as Dr. Sujata has also said, that these are things that can be very easily solved by local orders. These are things that these fixes can be achieved by people who are fixing local problems, much as Tamil Nadu solved a lot of problems with government orders which were sort of locally applicable. So I think that this is something that we've done successfully in Karnataka. This is something I know that other states have been experimenting as well, Telangana especially. Having a structure to it would mean that we create a cadre of people who are willing to do these postmortems and put in a scheme which actually values their contribution and their kind of efforts while coming at in the middle of the night to do the service.
Thank you, Sunal. Health is a state subject in India. We have 37 states and union territories in India, just for the international audience. And so the practices can vary from state to state, but this is an opportunity again for a body like NOTO to put a paper on good practices in medical legal cases, so that more and more hospitals follow the same kind of, more and more states follow the same kind of methodology, so that new states which start the program don't have challenges in the medical legal cases in organ donation. I remember in Tamil Nadu, we had huge challenges in getting inquests done. So the solution we found was appointing a nodal officer in the police department. We actually spoke to the police, the IG of police, and the solution they gave was you have a nodal officer for the state for medical legal cases in organ donation. And that actually helped a lot of us in getting over the inquest problem, because the police would not come to the hospital to, even do an inquest. That's how we overcame the problem. So these good practices can be put in a document and piece on the website, and then, it could be implemented in various states, at least the new states which start, so that you don't again start from zero. A new state doesn't start from zero to go forward. Let's take one more issue of directed donation. We had a case history again of a 48-year-old lady, brain hemorrhage, is declared brain dead. Brother of the patient is on hemodialysis and is on waiting list for kidney transplantation. The family agrees to donating all organs of the lady on a precondition that one kidney be given to her ailing brother. However, state authorities refuse and all organs are wasted. In the last 3 donations, I think in Delhi NCR, directed donation has been a problem. What is required? Dr. Avnish said, you have a publication on this. You have been involved with some of the cases. Your views on directed donation?
Very briefly, I feel that we should have directed donation in our country, but with some riders. We should allow directed donation only if somebody from the near relatives needs an organ, and if that person is already registered for a transplantation with NOTO, ROTO, or SOTO. So if that condition is satisfied and we make sure that there is no ulterior motive about this, I think we should go ahead. In countries like US, Richard is here, I think almost 100 directed donations are done every year. So it is something we should look at closely, because every time a request like that comes up, the entire organization and the state goes into a tizzy. So we must have something in writing to guide people. And the precedence is already there. We've done it a few times now.
Yes. Thank you so much, Avnish. I absolutely agree with you. And that again, it happens, once in a way. And as you said, when something like this comes up, then everybody has this confusion, thought process. Some people say yes, some people say no. So then we need to have some uniform guidelines for directed donation. This is the last of the cases which I'm presenting today for discussion, because we're running out of time. As far as living transplantation is concerned, we need to simplify the whole procedure. For consent forms for living transplantation are multiple. These are all consent forms for living transplantation. I'm not going to go into great detail. There's deceased donation, very few forms. There's a Form 8 for consent, Form 10 for brain death certification. So there are 12 forms for living donation, 2 forms for disease donation. There's need to simplify living donation in this program. We don't have time for both. I'll skip that. How can we simplify living donation? Veena, can I get you back here? Veena, are you there? Hello?
I think she's not there. Dr. Mohanka is back. You were calling him earlier. He was not there.
Ravi, sorry, we missed you. Do you want to comment on this living donation? I know you sometimes have problem with, getting your certification for, living donation permission for a, live donor.
Yeah, so sometimes we have we struggle, especially in acute liver failure cases. When there is an emergency living donor transplant to be done, and the donor is from another state, to get the NOC is sometimes really difficult. And that is one thing that we should simplify. What we could suggest is to allow in emergency situations to get the NOC in retrospect, for in future. So that is one glaring thing that we face all the time.
Okay. So, I think the living donation requires a separate discussion altogether. Veena was, has a document on that. In fact, she's done a thesis on that.
I just saw her again, Veena. I think she's coming in and
She's
out.
back?
I just saw her 2 seconds ago when Dr. Mohanka was speaking. Veena,
If
you
somebody
there?
can.
I think she must be having a poor connection, Dr.
Yes.
Not there anymore. Not here now.
So let's then, I think, as we're short on time.
Can I make a comment here? Like living, living
Yes.
donation. Living donation, basically there appears to be too many forms, but they are for different categories. Like one is for the near relative, one is for other than near relative, spouse. So like they have been made specifically, so they all 12 are not applicable to every single case. So that is one thing. Second, what Dr. Mohanka was saying regarding NOC, that NOC is now done away with. It is mainly a verification certificate which is required, and only in case of an other than near relative it is required, not for near relative. So that verification certificate by the local tehsildar identifying the domicile status, that is the legal and residential status of the person.
That's the one.
So
That's the
yeah, one. It is so that NOC has been done away with now. It is not required.
So still there is a Form 20 and Form 20 Part 1, Part 2, Dr.
20 is, yeah, Dr. 20 is verification certificate, which can be given by the local tehsildar, which is nearby to the residence of the person, because earlier they used to go to the state headquarters to get that NOC from the state level committee, which was a tedious process.
See, Dr. Nalin Kumar, I feel that Form 1, 2, 3 can be combined. There's no reason to have 3 different forms here. And then again, you know, this Form 11, joint application of donor and recipient, again, as sponsor donation, all this can be a combined form. We don't need to have separate forms for this, because it basically same things is spoken about. So why need to complicate this whole thing? We can have a discussion separately on this issue. But the whole idea of this was to bring some of the key.
If exercise is done, we can definitely merge the forms. We can.
That's what I was trying to say.
Yes.
So since we're again, running completely out of time, I just want to conclude here. Is it time? Let's do a last poll. Is it time to consider another revision of THO Act? Jareen, you are back. Yes, no, or not sure. We have had 25 years now. So should we now again go back and rethink our law and put some new provisions in it? Things like bring, if there is an angle of body donation, research into the donation and so on. So we bring that, and a few little gaps here and there which we have spoken about. If those can be plugged, I think it will be better for the program. So Jareen, can you flash the results, please, so that we can conclude our panel discussion? Most of you say yes, obviously, as thought you would. There are some positives to take back, from the law. We've had a mandated choice on driving license included. This was started in Rajasthan initiative first, and there are 997 RTOs in this country. 1.15 crore fresh driving licenses are issued in the country. We did an interview with the Commissioner of Transport, Mahendra Soni, in Rajasthan, and what the impact of including organ donation on driving license in Rajasthan has been huge. Those 275,000 people in Rajasthan have expressed the consent for organ donation, which is usually mind-boggling, to be honest. We also have the required request. It needs to be implemented. We have spoken about it earlier. Asking for organs in the event of brain death in the hospitals now is compulsory. We need to have death audits. Reporting brain deaths in the hospital should be mandatory. As somebody said earlier, Dr. Anil Kumar, I think the criminal cases in the commercial dealing with organ donation also has come down in the country. While in 2016 there was only 1 case. So I want to finish off with this slide: a green corridor on roads. This is a organ being taken in from one place to another place, and you can see the response from the people throwing flowers on the van which was carrying the donor body. What we need now, I think, is also green corridors within hospitals to improve the procedures. And if we do that, I think we can make a huge difference. We also have now an Annadata Smarak in Jaipur, dedicated to all the organ donors and their family members in Jaipur. Need similar kind of monuments, perhaps, to pay our respects to the donors in the country. And with that, I can like to conclude this panel discussion, and I would like to thank all my panelists, and I would like to thank my team, MOHAN Foundation, for putting all this together. Thank you very much. I hand over to Kalvi.
Actually, hand over to Sujata. Sujata, over to you.
Well, we have come towards the end of the program. On behalf of MOHAN Foundation, would like to extend our sincere thanks to the chief guest, Honorable Minister of Parliament of Rajya Sabha, Padma Shri Dr. Vikas Mahatma, for joining us and gracing this occasion. It was indeed our honor to have you inaugurating this course. Thank you so much. Also would like to thank Dr. Rajneesh Shaghai, Director NOTO, for his brief address, as well as extending his support towards the future collaborations. Thank you, sir. Would like to thank our funder, TransAsia Consultants Private Limited, for their immense support, without whom this would not have been even possible. Also would like to thank all the panelists of today's discussion, Dr. Anil Kumar, Dr. Avneet Seth, Dr. Sonal Asthana, Dr. Noble Gracious, Dr. Rahul Pandit, Dr. Sujata Patwardhan, Dr. Ravi Mohanka, and Dr. Veena Jose for their valuable for sharing their perspectives towards those important discussions. A special mention to Mr. Saurabh Agarwal for spending his time and sharing his experience in spite of grievous moment that he is going through. Thank you, Mr. Saurabh Agarwal. Also would like to thank all the faculty, national and international faculty who have contributed towards building this course material. Without you, we would not have definitely made this far. Thank you once again to all of you. And a heartfelt thanks to all the audience for staying this long and making this as a successful event. And last but not least, would like to express my thanks and acknowledgement towards all the members of the Mohan Foundation for their enduring support towards this new initiative. Once again, thank you so much to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Yeah. Good night. And a very happy New Year to everybody. Yeah.